Welcome to the Business of Race podcast, where we discuss issues of race and racism, how they impact businesses, and what employers can do to address these issues to create a healthier work environment for everyone. I'm your host, Regina Newkirk-Rucci, the Director of Equity for 90 Forward. And today in the conference room, I am delighted to be joined by my Leadership Jacksonville classmate and licensed mental health counselor and CEO of Step by Step for Help Foundation, Desiree Jones. Welcome to the conference room.
Hello, thank you for having me.
All right, so we've got a very important topic to discuss. And before we get into it, have a little water cooler conversation. I tend to be an anti-technology person. Just technology is not my favorite thing. But I do find occasionally there are some apps that really make my life a lot easier, better, etc. So just, do you have any thoughts as far as apps you find particularly helpful, or sort of your go-tos, or things that people ought to really look at if they're looking to do some things?
Yeah. I'm not really a tech person either. I think the best thing on my phone is the calendar. Right? So it keeps me organized. So that's my go-to for everything, because if it's not there, I'm not doing it. I forgot about it and I don't know where it is. Right? Mm-hmm. So not so much as apps. I recommend apps to people that I may serve, clients, like the I Am app. That app reminds them every few minutes about who they are, helps with their self-esteem. There's a mindfulness app that they can use so they can kind of just be in the moment and be still, during the day when things are happening. So I do refer those apps to clients, but for me, the biggest one is the calendar.
Is your calendar. Well, it's funny. I actually, my two are related to those two categories. So I love traveling. That's my jam. I'm always trying to do that. And I just found out about this app called TripIt, which will take all of your flight information or travel information, hotel information, and create itineraries for you.
Oh, cool.
And it is beautiful, and, lays it out on a calendar and all of that. And it's just having all of your trip information in one place. That one has been fantastic. That's my new favorite. And then, sort of as mindfulness, I travel a lot, and when I travel, I don't sleep particularly well, and I've been having real challenges sleeping. And so I have a Better Sleep app that has been really very good. So I get the deep brown noise, the ocean, and some mind, I forget what they're called, but some brain waves at the same time. And I have found that particularly when I'm out of town, that has been helping me sleep better. It's also helped me to go back to sleep faster. So that's been good as well. So I think a lot of the mental health, mindfulness apps, there's several out there that can really assist you with that. So that's good.
Yeah, and that one sounds really good.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. It's really good. Lots of different noises, and as well as other things that can really help improve your sleep, and even just meditation, mindfulness kind of space, create that for you. So it's really good. But I think also very appropriate for this conversation that we're going to have. So you are a mental health professional. That is what you do. That's your jam. And we have a mental health situation in this country, right? In my work in 90 Forward, we've been going around having community conversations, asking what the number one health issue is: mental health. 90% of Americans feel like we are not in a good place regarding mental health. The top concern I hear from parents with youth is youth's mental health, particularly as it relates to social media, right? So there is this big concern about mental health, and I think that's something that most everybody recognizes and knows. But I don't think that employers really think about addressing it. right? Because yes, it's a problem. We know people are anxious and depressed, and people are really struggling to sort of embrace who they are and really feel good about themselves. But that's not that I don't need to address that as an employer. But at the same time, that's contributing to people being absent or not being fully present at work, not getting the most from employees, people not being fulfilled and happy, and leads to employee turnover, et cetera. Right. So I think it is really important for employers to address mental health, but I don't think it's something that's naturally done. So like, okay, it's a problem, but as an employer, I would have no idea what to do. So as we think about talking with employers about this issue of mental health, what do you think employers need to know? And then what are some things that they could do to address it?
I think the first thing that employers need to really think about is that your employees are human, right? So just like you have day-to-day issues, life issues, so do they. And so the most important thing is just to be aware that they're your employees, but they're human. They have problems. And just because they're showing up to work every day doesn't mean that they're okay, right? And so as an employer, you have to have a safe space, right? You have to have an open door policy, a place where your employees can feel good enough to come and communicate with you, to talk to you. And I think a part of that is not being afraid to talk about mental health, right? Not being afraid to ask your employees, are you okay today? Right? What's going on today? A simple, how are you today, but waiting for the answer, right? Or giving a smile, right? Because if you're paying attention to them, you'll notice if something's off, right? And that's your time to communicate or address it, right? Because if you can take that time with them, that builds a bond, that builds a rapport, and guess what? That also builds stability with the job, right? So that's one thing. I think another thing too is just making sure that during the day or whatever your day is, make sure that they have the breaks, the time, just to step away from the office sometimes, because it can be mind-boggling with work and not knowing what they have going on, right? Make sure that you're ensuring what they need as far as breaks, time to themselves or whatever it is, and honor that space and time for them, right?
So those seem like two relatively simple things. But I think sometimes we have some things that get in the way. So for instance, when you talk about sort of checking in on employees' mental health, I don't know that most employees feel like they could say, yeah, I am not doing that great today. Because there is this expectation that if you show up for work, you're great. You're
supposed to.
You're supposed to, right? You're supposed to be great for the job here. But I think there's also such a stigma around mental health. It's lessened in the past few years, but there is still some worry about being seen as a nutcase or, you're going to be inept and not able to handle it. You're cracking under the pressure, whatever the case might be. But it's not perceived as being okay. I cannot as easily admit to the fact that I am having panic attacks and anxiety issues as I can to the fact that I'm having high blood pressure and I've got an arthritic knee, right? Physical health is fine, but mental health isn't. So how do employers address the stigma attached to mental health?
I think the first thing is maybe, like you talked about physical health, why can't we call it mind health? Why does it have to be mental? If you're checking in on physical, why can't we check in on your mind, right? And you don't have to walk up to someone and say, hey, are you depressed or are you anxious, right? You can just say, how are you? What's going on today? Did you get any sleep? You're walking kind of slow. Is there something going on? You want to talk? You need a break? So I believe that not always calling it mental health sometimes helps in those environments, and just checking on people, asking those questions. Like I said, paying attention to them, watching, because you're going to watch the numbers when they fall. right? You're going to be the first person to write an evaluation and all those other kind of things. Think about what you could have done as an employer if you would have just asked certain questions, like those questions on the evaluation. A lot of it could be alleviated, right? By just putting in a safe space, a space to communicate. A lot of things that I see employers doing now is, they have these rooms where they have the mental health space where you can go and take a break, whether it's a massage chair or a dim light. Like, those are very important things that you can do in the workplace, and maybe it lessens the conversation, right? But as an employer, if they know that you feel comfortable and you continue to talk about it, guess what's going to happen? Everybody's going to start to talk about it. When you start to have your staff meetings, if you're starting off with how's your physical health, how's your mind health, let's talk about that today. You bring people in for training for everything else. Why not bring them in for meditation or yoga or something like that relates to your mind? Because ultimately, if your mind isn't doing well, your job's not going to do well. Right.
And all of that just serves to normalize it, right? If that's part of the training schedule and there's a room and we recognize that mental health days or mind health days are a day that you need to take, please do. That's encouraged. Those kinds of things really do help say that this is okay and it's okay to bring that work. And I also think there's a little bit of a generational issue here too, right? Where older generations, I will say me, that was something that wasn't discussed. But when you start talking about millennials and Gen Zs, that's almost an expectation because they have been raised with more awareness around it, and that's really in the ready. So as we talk about trying to get younger employees on board as well, you're really going to need to address this because that's already going to be an expectation. I also think too, typically that's lived in HR and that's still a good place for it. But I think a lot of employers don't think about bringing some of that to the forefront. What are some of the things in the HR space that employers might also want to be looking at with things like, and I can't even think of what they're called for employee resources to call it, but things like that.
So with HR, it's all policies, procedures, and making sure everything falls in place. So I think you can start there. Like, what can we put in place for mind health for our employees, right? Do we give them a day off or, I don't know, whatever that company comes up with, but just like you place everything else in policies and procedures, put it there. When you do onboarding, make a topic for mind health so they know right off the bat, okay, this company is going to support me. If I have a mental health issues, I don't feel afraid to go and talk to them because they're already on it. They have something in place for us to talk about, right? So that initial conversation is always already being had, that it's normalized, that we talk about it, that it's okay for you to feel this way, and we're going to do this, and we have EAP in place, and your benefits cover that. All of that can go in the same conversation with HR, right? And so when it's passed down to your manager or what have you, guess what? Now we're going to talk about it again. Hey, on Mondays, we take 5 minutes for a stretch break. We take 5 minutes to take deep breaths. Okay, so now we're moving down the chain. Now everybody's normalizing it. We're going to, end the stigma at this workplace and let you know that it's okay and we're here for you, right? And then if there are more issues that they can't necessarily, because a lot of people don't want to call EAP, right? We have EAP clients, and a lot of people are like, do you know where I work at? They don't want you to know, right? So it starts from the top, especially with HR and benefits. Now let's really talk about what EAP is for. Use it. It's here.
Well, and I think, again, that's sort of the tying of the two, right? Because people don't want to use EAP because there's stigma attached to it. And, oh gosh, this is going to get back to my boss, right? But if you've really done the work to break down the stigma,
exactly,
then
they'll use it.
People will use it. And I want people to use it because we're paying for it so that you can have better mind health, so that you are being able to bring your best self to work. This goes to productivity and profitability. Because if your employees are not mentally well, your company is not mentally well.
Though those the nines start looking like the sixes, right? All the numbers start to go together, right? When somebody's not in the right headspace. And I think as an employer, you have to understand, and you talked about employers being afraid to kind of talk about it. Well, which would you rather have, your business messed up or afraid to have a conversation? And I think if you, as an employer, if you don't think about the stigma and you think about the employees, that's what helps. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. Everybody has stuff. How would you want to be approached by it? And if you can take that and switch places, that's how you talk about it, right? Everybody wants to know that it's okay. It's just that simple. Hey, you'll be okay today. It's going to work out. We're here for you.
Right.
That's real simple, right? And we didn't even talk about mental health.
Right.
So sometimes just knowing that it's a safe space and they're okay and somebody's noticing, okay, that I'm not okay today, that's still a lot. That speaks volumes about an organization or a company.
I think also sharing your own story, right?
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
there's power.
Absolutely.
If I can tell my own story, if I can say, I have been really struggling. I've been feeling burned out and I couldn't even focus. So I knew I needed to take a couple of days off and it really helped. And so now I'm better. It's still a little bit of touch and go, but I'm so much better now for doing that. That communicates, again, that it's normal. We talk about things openly here. There's no repercussions for you having to deal with mind health issues. And so I think sometimes people are reluctant to share what they would consider to be vulnerabilities, but employees really respond to that, and it can be extremely empowering. Oh, if my boss is going through it, then you know what? I could talk to him or her about what's happening with me.
And it can be really simple. I know a lot of companies send out newsletters or emails. There may be a time, to just kind of help everything. Just send out emails about mental health. Let's talk about what's happening. These are the signs and the symptoms. Did you guys know this? And if you start to feel this way, because a lot of employees may be feeling a certain way and they don't know what it is, right? And without getting the employer that deep into it, but why can't we put a blurb in the newsletter or a blurb on the email or something to let you know, hey, we see the mental health piece, right? It's not invisible.
Right.
So, so that's another way of just letting them know that, hey, around here, this is what we're going to do.
And I think that has to be consistent, right?
Absolutely.
That can't just be in Mental Health Awareness Week, right? But if what happens if there is a section of your newsletter that's devoted to mental health? If that is something that you do at a mental health, a mindfulness moment that you start all meetings off with, something that you consistently do will really communicate that this is part of the culture here, and your mind is just as important as your body to us, and we want to really make sure that your self in totality is in good health. So I think it doesn't have to be exorbitantly taxing for an employer, but it does have to be thoughtful.
Sure.
And what are the different avenues where you can get information? I know we had an episode last season where we were talking about domestic violence, and she was suggesting, the notices that you can put up in the bathroom stalls for people to read, they've got a moment, right? It can be some really interesting things that you could do. What happens if you have a mindfulness message or an encouraging message in bathrooms or in places or in break rooms, right? What happens if you bring in some celebratory snacks and nope, this is just a mental health break, right? Take 5 minutes, get to know your coworkers, talk about something not work related. So I think there are some creative ways, and that helps you build community. It helps you people feel included and seen. Seen equals valued. Valued equals longevity. And just thinking about that in those terms really, like I said, and at the end of the day, it's your bottom line. It's really going to help your bottom line.
It is. And And you talk about communities, right? A lot of organizations or companies, they give sponsors, right? So you can sponsor mental health. You know, that's being a voice in the community. And if your employees see that, that's still a message. It may not be as personable, but it's still a message like, okay, they're into this mental health thing, right? So even that is something that you can think about.
Well, and again, this goes back to if 90% of Americans are saying that our mental health is not in a good space right now as a country, then the overwhelming majority of your employees recognize that mental health is an issue. And so I think, again, if you are supporting employees and you're supporting the things that they are interested in, then supporting and sponsoring mental health activities, awareness, organizations, what have you, does align with supporting your employees because people are saying it's a problem. So, and I think people are saying it more. And, I know for me, the busyness factor, I think people feel very, very busy. I think that people can be overwhelmed by technology, right? I'm not a social media person per se, but I do know that I've gotten on Facebook and then 2.5 hours later, I'm like, well, where did the time go, right? And there's so much to do. There's so much information that it can be a little overwhelming. So recognizing that, giving employees some alternatives as well as supporting addressing that really can speak to, hey, we see you and we know this is an issue and we want to address it because we care about you as an employee.
Yeah, and those simple things are so much better than saying, okay, that's not my problem, that's your problem. I mean, that's a huge statement, but it removes all of that once you just start doing the small things, and the small things will add up. And employees pay attention. They pay very close attention. Right. So you're talking about the bathroom signs, even the messages on the board. As you come in the door, smile, welcome, have a great day today. Here again, just the simple things. Right?
Yeah, and it just makes for a better environment. I want to work in a place where people notice me and care about me, and And
it's almost like you have to teach them to not necessarily treat them like kids, but when you went to school, there was a terrific kid or the student of the month. Those things still need to happen, right? They build the self-esteem. They want to come to work. They want to produce.
So, right. And again, you saw me, right? If I won the award, that means you saw some of the things that I was doing.
You were definitely paying attention.
And maybe the things that aren't always the attention getters. But, there was a woman that used to work in my department who, I don't care, rain, sleet, snow, shine, she was at her desk working on time every day. Like clockwork, you could depend on it. And one of the supervisors recognized her for that in a meeting, and she started crying and just talking about how much it meant that somebody appreciated the fact that she valued the company enough to be there on time every day. And I was like, okay, I never think about being on time quite like that. But, that's important. And that was really encouraging for her. So I think, again, those places where you can give encouragement are phenomenal. So as we wrap up, again, this is a big topic, but I don't think the response has to be so big, but it can be small things that have a huge impact. So you think about what we've talked about today, and I'm going to do the big takeaway a little differently. If you were going to tell employers to do one thing to support employee mental health, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell them to just, and I tell my staff and my team this all the time, about the community and about people. Without them, there's no us, right? And I need for you guys to be healthy so that we can produce and help these other people, right? And I think that's the most important piece. letting them know that they're valuable no matter what predicament they're in. They could be broken, they can be whole, they can be whatever. But let them know they're valued, right? When people are valued, like we just talked about, that's what they want. So don't forget even the smallest things. Even if they don't have a huge position, just value everyone, right? Pay attention to them, notice them, and you'll get the results that you want. And as far as mental health is concerned, the small things, right? And always remember, and I always say this, at any moment, your situation can change. So you have to treat people like you want to be treated. And consider that even in the mental health space. If you're going through depression, anxiety, bipolar, or whatever it is, what would you want your employee to do? Right? So if you have that thought or that frame of mind, then you'll be a lot easier to interact with your employees as far as mental health is concerned. Yeah.
And I think for me, which would follow that, is sort of treat it like salt when you're making soup, right? You mix it in everything. It should show up everywhere. And so it can be big things, it can be small things, but it does need to be consistent things. So that you create an environment where it's normalized, you create an environment where it's supported, and you give employees tips and tools that they know that they can use without repercussion to address mental health issues that they have.
Sure, I agree.
Yeah. And so I think if you do those two things together,
you have to start somewhere.
Yes. And start.
That's it.
Just
start.
Little step, but start.
That's right. Step by step.
Step by step. There you go. See? All right. Well, Desiree, thank you so much for joining us in the conference room today. This has been a phenomenal conversation and I think a really important one. And we really appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Be sure to click the like button because we like to be liked, but it also helps us get our content to more viewers who would enjoy it. We also want to make sure that you subscribe so that when we have new content, especially in our upcoming season, you will be notified. Thank you so much for joining us in the conference room today, and take care.